She climbed down the tower and walked up through Liverpool during the festival. And we'll just skip past it. We've recently completed the new frontage to Liverpool Station as well as part of those works. So let's talk about Nью-Айлингтон. So it's a project that started, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago now. A piece of Manchester which was had been much neglected, and as it says here, it is a story of partnership, because it was a site that measured 15 hectares, I think. Part of the site was owned by the City Council, Manchester City Council. Part of it was owned by a developer, Urban Splash. And central government agreed to contribute some money to help to remake the place. So they formed a partnership, a three-headed partnership. That sounds like a nightmare to any designer, to have a client with 3 heads. Usually 1 head is too much for a designer, but 3 is shocking. But it was a very good partnership, and the aim was to make a place out of something which had become a very poor quality place and was not a good place for its residents, actually. And so it was very much about the people that lived there, but of course it was about profit. But very importantly, it was about the planet. It was a project which all the partners and the design team set out to try to make the most sustainable project we could at the time we were doing it. And that remains the aim of this project. This is the main station into Manchester, Piccadilly Station. Here's the site. It's about 7 minutes walk to the town hall. So it's right in the centre of Manchester. This area down here, you can see these large blocks of buildings. This is the historic heart of industrial Manchester, where the great mill buildings are. These are these large buildings you can see here. Canal running along here, another canal running along here. So the site sits between 2 great canals, and it has a main road that heads straight into Manchester, one of the main radial routes into Manchester. So quite a demanding site. In the 1970s, which was just about the worst time for planning, I guess. It was a time when the great visionary planners of the 50s and 60s had done their stuff, and actually were starting to lose confidence. Some of it wasn't working the way they'd hoped. So planning was intellectually at quite a low point. But we were still having to build houses. We needed more houses. And we built this estate. So we as a community, I didn't do it. Clearly I'm too young for that. But we made this estate on very poor principles, really very poor urban principles. And that was part of the reason that the estate started to go into decline. By the time we came to it, here it is. It's a pretty tough place, as you can see. And by the time we came to it, people were asking the question, is this the worst estate in Manchester? Well, it's not a fair question, because obviously the people that live here were perfectly nice people, but it didn't feel like a good place to be. It had lots of social problems going on. There was drug dealing on the streets, there was prostitution going on the streets, while families were trying to live amongst this. So it was quite a disturbing place, and right at the centre of the city. But it had some really beautiful parts. Here's the Ashton Canal. And much of the work that you have to do, I think, when you're coming to places and trying to make a place, to revive a place, very often people get focused on the negative things of somewhere. I always joke in the UK that when you go to school, the teachers spend time finding the subjects you're not very good at, and then they make you do extra lessons in those. And I used to come home and say to my dad, why am I doing extra lessons in the things I'm not good at? Why can't I do double lessons in the things I'm good at? That would be more fun. That would make me a better person. It would make my teacher's life easier. The other kids would enjoy it more. I still don't understand this, but we do it. But it's true of a place. I think if you come to a place and you focus on the things that aren't good and the things that don't work, you know, if all your focus is on things that don't work, well, the best you're ever going to do, actually, if you think about this, if you solve all those things that don't really work, all you'll have is a place that's not broken. You won't have a place full of joy and human spirit and cultural activity. You'll just have a not broke place. So it seems to me a very poor aim for anyone. It's a poor aim for life, actually. If you get up every morning thinking, I must try and not do anything wrong today. Well, of course you mustn't do anything wrong today, but what if you get to the end of the day and you've done nothing wrong? You just didn't do anything wrong today. You want to end your day saying, actually I did 5 really good things, and okay, 3 of the other things weren't so good. But so I think you have to have an aim for a place that's about positive. You've got to find something, things that are good, and build on those good things, because actually that's the human spirit is like that. It needs to cling on to something positive and optimistic. And if you do that, actually you can deal with all sorts of quite bad things. And the fact is, you are going to have to deal with some bad things, because life's not perfect, and nor is the urban environment. We can't fix it all, we can't make it all work, and then it'll be fine for the rest of the time. So this was important, finding special things that we all agreed were good. And of course, this is important, we have to have people who care, people who live there, who care about the place. They might not be taking care of it, but they're people that when you speak to them, have a history there and an emotional response to the place they live in. Sometimes that emotion is anger, but actually that's good, because anger means you feel something about your place. The worst thing is when you find people with complete apathy, no interest, they're broken, and that's very difficult to make from. So we had good things, we had some really interesting and quite feisty people. And we talked about sustainability at the beginning, and so we set down, actually, this unreadable text, even if you can read English, because it's fuzzy, but we set down some principles about the sustainability of Nью-Айлигтон. What kind of place it would be, not details. We didn't say, well, we'll make it all of this material or that, but we said, let's have a place that uses as little energy as it can. Let's make an arrangement with energy suppliers so that it's in their interests to supply less energy. At the moment, you buy electricity, and if I am the electricity company, I'd quite like you to buy more electricity, really, because then I get wealthier. Well, that's not a very good way as a nation to be dealing with your energy. It's better if we make an agreement with the energy company that says, we'll pay you a certain amount every year, and you supply us with all the heat and light and everything we need. And then the energy company then tries its best to do that as efficiently as possible. The more efficiently it does it, the more money it makes and the less energy you use. So there were principles like that we tried to build in to the system. We said things like we wouldn't excavate large areas of the site. There was contamination all over the site because it has an industrial history. We said, let's not dig that up and put it in trucks and drive it to somewhere else. That just uses fuel. It takes a problem from this place and it leaves it somewhere else. This isn't a good way to deal with your place. We said, let's not take any ground off the site. Whatever we find here stays here. We will treat it and make it chemically safe again, and then we made it structurally usable so that we could use it to build from. And we did the same. We said we won't import materials into the site. If we don't have enough material, we'll have to think of something to do to fill the gap. But what we won't allow ourselves to do is dig up clean material, gravels and things which are non-renewable materials and bury them. So there were a set of those things, and this amuses English people because one of our senior architects was a Frenchman called Christophe Aigret, so we labelled this Égalité, Liberté, Fraternité et Sustainability. So we gave him his fourth principle. We started, the real tricky exercise then is how do we start to make a place that the people there want to live in, and that responds to the sorts of things that those people want to have around them. And how could we try to involve them in that process properly? And in the UK, this has been going on for, I don't know, 15 years or so. This consciousness that we have to engage with local people about things we do. And it's obvious, really, but I know we don't always do it. And then, you know, for many years, we didn't do it in the UK. And I wouldn't say we were expert at it now. And I think one of the failings has been the instant response to it was to say, okay, let's get some experts in to talk to people. Well, if you're the designer and you're the client and the developer, the last thing you want actually is a third party standing between you and the people you're trying to talk to. It may well be that you need a special expertise to talk to people, to understand them, if you're a developer or an engineer or an architect. But the reality is you won't really understand them unless you talk to them. You're going to have to find a way. That's what we decided at the beginning of this project, was however well equipped we were at the beginning, we would have to find a way to talk to people about what they wanted, to listen to them about what they wanted, and to try to build that into what we were doing. So we started by making a plan, not a master plan, because that's like bringing something to land on other people, but we felt, as designers, there's nothing more frightening actually for a designer, and maybe many of you here are designers, than seeing a blank sheet of paper. We like constraints, we like to be constrained, and then that can trigger a lot of our thinking. So what we make very often is what we would call a sacrificial scheme. Let's draw something, and then we can look at that and criticise it and see where it doesn't work. So we started to do that process. And this was one of the early sketches that the architect Will Alsop, who was the architect on the scheme with us, did to start to describe the two canals. There's the one canal, the other canal. There were lots of old canal arms that had been buried over time. So we were thinking that we would bring back some of that water into the site and set up the buildings so that they faced into the city centre, and so that people had views into the water. And then there was a great movement, arc of movement here for people on foot to get across to the station and into the city centre. And that developed into this plan. So here's one of the canals again, the other one down the bottom. This was the radial route that was a really poor quality. It was just a road, really. It wasn't a street. It was very difficult for people on foot or bikes to use. It was just a car route. But it was going to be at the heart of our new place. This is the new health centre. So the old hospital was just over here. This is the old hospital that we were going to remake into apartments, build a new health centre beside this new park with a school over on this side. Because this part of Manchester was also being worked on, but so we wanted the school to sit between the two so that we didn't get a split in the community. So that was the big plan. And to help us to think about it, but also to help with the conversations we were having with local people, we and the team, we make some of those dreams, really. Let's draw some of those dreams, because it's very difficult to sit and talk without images in front of you, whether you like those images or not. They're very powerful to get reactions from us. There's a key point here. We're not interested in, we weren't asking people, what do you want? And they say, well, we want a new school. And we were asking them, what sort of place do you want to live in? What do you want it to feel like? What do you want to do there? Do you want to play there? Do you want to run there? Do you want to work? We want to know about that human response to the place, not a kind of functional, technical, well, we need a school and a health centre and so many houses. Because that doesn't make a place, that just makes a list of buildings. So we wanted the best pub in Manchester. And when we said we'll have the best chip shop in Manchester, and we'll have and the developer still has that aim, he still is on that message. And created a set of images of what the place could start to become. But then the real serious work has to get underway, actually, which is, we had, I think, 200 people were still living in those houses, so although many had been boarded up and were closed down, there were still about 200 people still living there. And we began these conversations with them. Very difficult conversations, actually. It all looks very pleasant there with no sound, but I can tell you, it wasn't, the first hour of every session wasn't very pleasant at all. It was fairly, people were quite angry, they felt they'd been neglected for years, although we hadn't done it to them. The guy standing next to me there, who clearly I think it's sunny and he thinks it's raining, but he's the developer. And we hadn't done any of this to them, but we were the people that were there, so we were the people to be angry at. But what we had to do was be patient and let people get rid of that kind of reaction and start to get down to their more normal level of what they were concerned about. And sit around, this was in the pub actually on the site, which I'd love to tell you that it was a really beautiful old pub, and Manchester does have many of those. But this is one of the worst modern pubs that you'll ever go into. There's a really horrible building, but of course it was at the heart of the community, so we made it the base for the discussions. And we made a model, again because, partly because as designers we need to look at physical models, but also it's very helpful when you're trying to engage people who are not involved in design and not spending their lives trying to see things in 3 dimensions. Models are very valuable, and models with this isn't exactly what is being made, but it does have all of the principles that we're delivering and that are being made are in this model. Talk, talk, talk. So then